So with the iPhone, to edit your pictures, you're going to open up the picture in your photo album, and then you're going to hit edit. And once you do that, you have lots of options. The first option is, do you want to crop this picture? So down here, the little crop tools on the bottom of the three things, hit crop. And all you can do to crop your picture is drag the corners. It'll give you the ability. You can also grab the image and move it around if you wanted to center it. That you could go ahead and do it like that, and then you hit done. Okay. If you want to undo that, you can go up to edit and hit revert, and it'll revert to your original. If you wanted to edit in a specific shape, let's say you wanted to crop it in a square, you hit the crop button, and then up here, right next to the three dots is a little bit of a square thing. Gives the option, you can change that format to a square. You can do exact ratios, 9:16, 8:10, however you want to do it. I'm going to leave it at a square, and I'm going to hit done. Okay, so now I've got it cropped at a square. It's still the original exposure. So I'm going to go back to edit. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to see is a bunch of buttons up here at the top. So you can change the exposure of something. You can make it overexposed, underexposed. There are lots of different little sliders. You can change the brilliance. You can change the contrast. Contrast can be really dark. It could be really bright. A lot of this stuff is overkill. But one of the things you might want to do is change the brightness a little bit. And again, you don't have to slide it all the way over. You could just slide it a little bit and create some different brightness and hit done. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to hit edit again. And this time I really want to play with the saturation, which is right here. And what's neat about the saturation is if you oversaturate, you can see those colors, those greens become greener and the yellows become yellower, but you can also scroll all the way down. It just knocks all the color out of it together. So you end up with a black and white picture. So I could hit done. And if I want to go back and change something else, I can then come in and, iPhone has a lot of presets where you can then change sort of the color scheme of things. You probably don't need that so much with your photos that you're going to use for your paintings, but you can always go back to these things. I'm going to revert it back to its original. And again, there are lots and lots of options. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to crop it again as a square. And then I'm going to hit done, hit edit again. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to play with the contrast to really kind of show you what some of the things you could do, kind of make that, you can make the contrast a little darker, but then you can make it a little brighter. So you get more of a contrast. And I'm going to hit done. So all of these things you can play around with, positive and negative shapes. You can think about your background versus your foreground. Lots and lots of different things. The vibrance of the colors, you can boost that up a little bit. You can also do multiple things at a time. So I've boosted the vibrance and now I'm boosting the warmth. So you can see that the more of a orangey brown background versus a more bluey green background. Other things you can play with are the tint. So changing from kind of a blue scale to a red scale. And then sharpness, definition, noise reduction, and vignette. And the vignette kind of makes the corners a little darker. So there's all kinds of things you can do, and you hit done, and there you go, you're done.
So it's the same type of thing. In case of an Android phone, you're going to see a little pencil down here. Just click on the pencil. And the first thing you might be concerned with is the cropping, just like Celeste did. This right here, you see a little square that has the word free in it. If you click on that, that'll give you formats that you can use also. So once you hit the 1 by 1, that'll give us a square. We can say save. That'll save it like that. Then we can kind of continue editing by hit the pencil button again, the editor again. And you're going to see these little icons down here. The one that has a circle with the lines in it, the little hatching lines, that's going to be the one you'll want to click on to be able to change values and brightness and all the other kind of things like that. And so, like Celeste showed you on the iPhone, we have brightness, we have exposure, we have contrast, we have saturation, slide that over. We also have hue, and we have white balance too. Now I know that she has white balance on hers as well, but they'll work the same way. You'll just find it on, if you have an iPhone and you want to change the white balance, you can just find it on there just as easily. So with brightness, of course, that's going to brighten up the darker things, but it's also going to brighten up the lighter things too. And so you do want to kind of watch your highlights and make sure that you don't bleach those out too much. I'm going to lower that back down a little bit. Exposure is the same sort of thing. We could bring that dark of the background up a little bit by exposing it a little bit more, but that's also going to bring up the lights as well, and so we're going to be careful for those highlights. In terms of contrast, depends on your taste. You could add contrast if you want, or you could lower contrast. A lot of times what I do is I'll lower the contrast a little bit, just because it feels a bit more natural to me. Then with the saturation, if you're actually looking to just capture the values, desaturate it all the way, as opposed to using the presets for the black and white photos. If you desaturate it, your values will stay exactly the same. So it's really better to desaturate than it is to use a preset filter for black and white. Let's go ahead and save a copy of that. And then we'll continue to go from there. We'll go back to those things. Actually, let me open up the color one again. Just going to go back to our picture files here. So I'm going to open up the color one, hit the pencil again to edit. We'll hit the circle with the lines in it to go back to our values and what have you. In this case, I'm going to change the contrast. I'm going to lower the contrast a little bit. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of saturation to the color. By doing that, the darker values that would typically get oversaturated, this kind of helps to kind of pull them back into place. The hue is something you can change dramatically to get different effects of color. I don't really change the hue that much myself, but you can have fun with that if you want to. The white balance, you'll see these presets for white balance. You have auto, which I find auto never really works for me. I don't know why, but you'll have one for like direct sunlight. You can see how that makes things look cooler. You have one for cloudy color. You have one for incandescent bulbs. You can see how much bluer that shifts it, because incandescent bulbs are very, very warm. We have one for fluorescence. That also is kind of shifting to be a bit cool, because fluorescence may be a bit warm sometimes. And then the thing that says the letter K on it means Kelvin. That's typically, Kelvin is actually a temperature, but it's how photographers measure the temperature of the light, or the white balance. And so you can see here 4000 K is what we were set on for the fluorescence, and that's really in the warmer range. That means it's a warm light source, so the camera is going to try to counterbalance that warm light source by making things look cooler. And so if we kind of slide that back, we can see as we get to about 5500 Kelvin, that it's looking a bit more natural. And that's the kind of temperature that we would expect an object, let's say, in the shade. If we go a little bit more towards the cooler range, like around 6500 Kelvin, that's going to be adjusting fairly neutral, but a bit on the cooler side. You can see that added a little bit of warmth there. And we could also go very extremely warm if we wanted, let's say, to shift it that way. What's neat about the white balance is it will shift the feeling of the light towards warm or cool, but you will also maintain relationships between cool and warm colors. Like you can see these cooler shadows here on the rose as well. I kind of like that. I think it looks kind of nice. So I'm going to keep it like that and just save it like that. And so this is a comparison between the iPhone editor and the Android editors. These are typical of these. This phone that I have is a Samsung. Celeste, what is your iPhone? Is it an iPhone 10? 10. It's an iPhone 10. So yes, Celeste has an iPhone 10. And I would imagine that some of you probably have other phones, but your editors may be similar to these. And so hopefully you can play around with it and edit your photos for paintings so that you can get the kind of feel that you want from the photo. Because we're always interpreting photos. We're never just copying them. And so if we can make the photos have the right feel to our eye, then it'll help us to interpret from the photograph as opposed to just copy it. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Thank you very much, and you guys have a good day. Okay, bye.